Hey, FemFreq Radio listeners, it's summertime, and up here in the Northern Hemisphere, things are pretty hot. Why not soothe your weary minds by dipping into the Patreon community, where all the cool FemFreakers hang out? You get early access to new episodes, bonus tomfoolery from me, Carolyn, and Anita, merch discounts, listener polls, and the occasional surprise treat. You'll also get the chance to pat yourself on the back for supporting feminist pop culture analysis. If you want to be part of transforming the entertainment landscape, then support like yours is crucial to making sure that progressive voices are heard and challenging criticism finds a platform. Head on over to patreon.com/femfreak and sign up at any level to show your commitment to being critical of the media you love. Do not go into it with your MCU brain on, because we are trying to recalibrate y'all. We are trying to bring a Very Caro Movie into your home libraries. Hey everybody, welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love. I'm Ebony Adams. I'm stepping back into the host chair this week while Anita spends some time around Hollywood just looking for more premieres to crash. But joining me to chase chickens around this yard is Carolyn Pettit. Hey, Carol.
Hey, Ebony. How's it going?
All right. This week, we are surrendering to the contemplative pacing and character-driven appeal of A Very Caro Movie, Charles Burnett's 1990 masterpiece, To Sleep with Anger. Stay tuned. Let's get into it. So, Caro, two things.
Yes.
One, much more important in the micro world of my heart than the other. But let's start off by talking about news coming out about Activision Blizzard. Yeah. So I know a couple of folks who used to work at Activision.
Oh, wow.
And so, I kind of had a sense that this was coming,
right?
News-wise, and then like a day later, just the explosion of information about this lawsuit and about the allegations. But I think you've been following this story much more closely than I have.
Well, so the state of California has sued Activision Blizzard, after and it takes, I'm no expert on the process, but by the time the state launches a lawsuit, I mean, there is investigations that have been done. There is so people who are there are people reacting on Twitter being like, well, but we need to get the accused sides of the story or whatever, as if this is just this is just smoke, right? This is just people, but no, exhaustive investigations into what, the term widely being used is, which I think maybe even a little glib given the seriousness of what's occurred, but is frat boy culture at Activision Blizzard. Really, we're talking about truly widespread, deep-seated, horrifying culture of sexual harassment and misogyny. If you read the details of the lawsuit, there are, examples in there that are just, jaw-dropping in the kind of or should be. I mean, I guess in a way, there's an understandable kind of almost jadedness at times, perhaps among some, because yet another studio or publisher or gaming corporation or company or entity, it proves to have been a just hotbed of just male sexual abuse being visited by powerful men on women and apparently on men too and presumably potentially people of all genders but particularly I think women bearing the tremendous brunt of the horror and suffering and trauma here. So as frustrating as or horrifying as the allegations are, also of course some of Activision Blizzard's initial response to this has been just absolutely unacceptable, right? I mean, an initial statement was issued, which I don't have the text in front of me, but definitely had kind of boilerplate text to the effect that, this is, these are unfounded and, accusations. And, there's a higher up at Activision Blizzard I'm blanking on her name right now, but a, like Bush era, like torture apologist, is among the, those kind of crafting these statements. I did see actually not long before we started recording this, that I think very close to 1,000 Activision Blizzard employees sent an internal letter to the company or to the powers that be within the company, just absolutely, excoriating them, saying that the response to these accusations is completely unacceptable. Right. And so more power to them as they, work to make their voices heard and to make that company a place that is where employees have more power to address these things. I mean, because this, one thing these allegations or this lawsuit has sparked is another wave in the conversation about the need to unionize the games industry because HR is there. Naive people who think that the system works if people just use the system will say things like, well, why don't you just go to HR? And it's like, HR is there to protect the company.
Exactly.
And I mean, you often are putting yourself at risk of further retaliation or firing or, other consequences if you, as an abused individual within a place like this who has no power, go to HR with your, issues, your accusations, because they're going to make that calculus of, well, we have this powerful, executive man who, or this woman who is way lower on the totem pole. Well, it's a no-brainer. Like, obviously, we have to protect the powerful, the powerful executive or whatever the case may be. So, anyway, yes, a really. Again, it's truly kind of staggering some of the specifics of the lawsuit, and hoping that, wishing that these things never happen in the first place. But I don't know, hoping that good positive change comes out of this particular situation.
Absolutely. And just real quick, because I have nothing to add to your wonderful summation, except to say that I want to remind people about the Games and Online Harassment Hotline.
Yes, please.
So we will absolutely leave, information in the show notes. We'll mention it again at the end of the show, but just know that resource is there. If you have been affected, if, you are someone who would like to talk, get some advice, just have someone to listen to. We would encourage you to check out the Games and Online Harassment Hotline. And it's not just for people who are involved who have worked at Activision, who are involved in this latest. This is available for you, all the time. Right. And it's for people who work in the industry. It's for people who play games. It's for people who know people who play games. Yeah. It really is for everyone.
Yeah. And your issues might have nothing to do with the Activision Blizzard lawsuit, but it's also, even like bystander trauma is very real, or like, just maybe hearing about it and seeing this story so prominently discussed reminds you of, is triggering for you in some way because it reminds you of experiences that you've had in the past, whatever it is, but the hotlines, representatives are very trained. They know the language of games. They know the space. You don't have to do the work of like explaining to them the dynamics of the industry or what the terms that if you try to talk to somebody outside of games, they just don't get, and you have to do all this explaining. That's part of why the hotline is there. Is it's difficult to talk about these problems with people who don't understand what games, games culture at all. So you can reach the hotline by texting support to 23368 from anywhere in the U.S. Please avail yourself of that resource if you are in need or wanting somebody to talk to.
Yeah. Next thing up, and this is you guys. Everybody, this is, ever since I found out the news, I've been having to like recenter myself every day. My world is shooketh. There are big changes coming to the Feminist Frequency podcast. And let's be frank, let's be honest, folks. this is like pulling out, one of the chairs on a tripod. Things ain't gonna be stable after this, I don't know how it works after this, but one of our, oh boy, I can't even say it out loud. Caro is gonna be leaving us to take a fantastic opportunity, the opportunity of not doing this podcast. But she is moving on. Yeah. Anita and I are bereft. Anita is so bereft, she couldn't even be on the podcast today. She needed some emotional healing time.
She's crying in the fetal position somewhere.
She is. Yeah. But yeah, Carol is going to be leaving us. Yeah. This is her penultimate episode. That's
right.
And so that's one of the reasons, and I'm so glad we are tackling To Sleep with Anger on this podcast. But left to our own devices, Anita and I would probably have organized a conversation around some trash topic that Carol would just have to sit through. But for her last 2 episodes, we were like, oh no, we're going to let you have this. So, Carol, you're leaving us. What?
Yeah, I am. But the podcast will be great. You all will be great. Whatever, you'll figure out what to do without
I don't know about
me,
any of that.
And find somebody, way more, intelligent and insightful than me to fill this chair. I don't doubt, or whatever the plans are, whatever the case may be. But gosh, I'm sure going to miss, and I'm sure I'll get to say this again next week while Anita is here too. But I'm really going to miss this weekly opportunity to delve into film and television and other media with you, Ebony, the way we do here. It's been such a pleasure and a privilege, and
the world is. We are all dealing with seismic shifts to our reality right now. Won't say that this came at a bad time for me, Caro, but I'm saying, maybe you could have waited till the world got back to normal for whatever value of normal health. No, we are so excited for what you're doing next. And although we will miss you like the deserts miss the rain.
Oh, thank you.
This is, we'll do something, and maybe we'll just have a Carol call-in line where you just call and give quick bullet point reactions.
There you go.
Once a month that we just play for people to get that little taste of Carol. So
there you go.
Everybody, if you've been waiting to catch up on past episodes, I'm going to say slow it down. You got to, ration out these remaining 2 episodes. But let's get into it, because I am really eager to talk about today's topic. So I will say right off the bat, I had never seen To Sleep with Anger. I was convinced that I had, but I had not. And since watching it, have been unable to stop talking about it. And it really, oh boy, it really throws into relief the kind of trash I normally watch. Because I literally watched this and was like, oh, okay, like this is what a qualified filmmaker can do when, given the time to expand on celluloid. But so his visually arresting and emotionally dense work has collected multiple prestigious awards over the past several decades. But filmmaker Charles Burnett is one of those creatives for whom critical acclaim has not translated into mainstream awareness or success. And one of his acknowledged masterpieces by people who are in the know is the 1990 gem To Sleep with Anger, which is a fairly recent addition to the Criterion Collection. It's the story of a mysterious drifter whose charm and ambiguous motivations upend the life of a middle-class Black family in South Central LA. It stars a host of amazing actors, from the utterly compelling Danny Glover, who also co-financed the film, to the luminous Mary Alice and Vonetta McGee. Rounding out the cast are folks like Carl Lumbly and Richard Brooks, basically like an Ebony's who's who of character actors I love to see as family members who either endure Glover's presence in the family home or welcome him with naively open arms. This film, Caro, first, kudos on selecting it.
Thank you. So part of the reason I have to say I did have to be like, well, we've watched, MCU stuff for the last 2 episodes. That's probably garnered us a little higher than average listenership. I want to make sure that I tank that in my final 2 episodes. So, but this Carl Lumbly is in this, MCU actor Carl Lumbly. So this is MCU adjacent. But my goodness, this film. So I will, admit that like the thing that really interested me in this film, from just conceptually, like why I wanted to watch this film, was originally, at least, was Danny Glover's presence in this film. And not only Danny Glover as an actor, who I greatly admire and who, I think obviously has, had mainstream success with the films like the Lethal Weapon franchise, but is also this, virtuoso actor, from who, gave an amazing performance in, like Raisin in the Sun, a production of that. And anyway, but he's in a mode, like what I was curious about, I think, was that he's in a mode in this film that I at least have not really seen him in before, which is where that kind of, that friendliness, that quality that makes him seem so like approachable and, as an actor and as a person, is kind of turned on its head a little bit because he's so Danny Glover plays the drifter Harry, who arrives at this family home in South Central LA, and he's got this, this devilish really smile, I would say, and really just exudes this kind of seductive, but like what's the term I'm looking for? I'm blanking, but there's something clearly somewhat like evil lurking in the depths of this man. But you understand, you feel that, and the way this film uses like imagery and sort of portents, like there's almost a kind of like this film, it's not a horror film, but it's like you could see how this same story, just tonally shifted a little bit, could, I think, easily be a horror film. Like there's so many elements, things happen around Harry where you just sense this evil aura that he gives off. Like there's a moment where the daughter who is currently pregnant,
Linda.
Rhonda.
No, wait, I think. Oh God, we'll come back to that. Yeah.
But anyway, so when she meets Harry and she goes to shake his hand, each time she does so, like the baby in her, or like she gets this kick of like, and it's not like a nice kick, like, oh, the baby's kicking. It's like this interruptive, like there's something wrong here kick, and that's just one little example of these clues and these little hints, these things just in the air, in the atmosphere around Harry that kind of suggests that there is something, nefarious, not just on a human level, but on a level that goes beyond just the realm of the human into something more spiritual, like as if he may almost be the devil in human form or something like that.
It's so wonderful. I mean, so you have this great movie poster. And so if you've never, heard of or seen the movie To Sleep with Anger, A, check it out. But B, just Google it. And you'll see, what I mean when I say that the movie poster, sort of illuminates what Kara's talking about so wonderfully. Harry, the character that Danny Glover plays, holding this, displayed handful of cards. And the look that he gives is so deliciously sort of malevolent as he looks directly down the barrel, of the camera. And, the moment that you're talking about, Carol, when Harry reaches out to shake hands with Pat, her name is Pat, Junior's pregnant wife, and the baby kicks within her belly. But there's also the great scene where he is first, sort of introduced in the house, and Sonny brushes his feet with the broom.
Right.
And so if you're unaware of this folk superstition, brushing someone's feet with a broom is meant to portend like bad luck, right? And so Sonny does this once, and the reaction that Harry has, even for someone who subscribes to this belief, seems a bit outsized in that moment. It's not something that he laughs off, but he seems really sort of, struck in that moment. And then later he sees Sonny again with the broom in the house. He looks out of the bedroom door, and, there's a brief moment of like fear or trepidation on his face, and he chooses not to leave. There's no reason for him to have been, to be afraid of that child, except that Sonny clearly, and, perhaps it's something about children, about the innocent, perhaps see further and clearer into who he is. And I think, the film doesn't like beat you over the head with it, but it does offer you these just incredible sort of moments of thinking like, or wondering, who is Harry? Is he more than, the human male that he is? I mean, the fact that he is, his name is Harry, which is, an old nickname for the devil, I think is important here. And names are super important throughout the film. But I think, that's another way that we're meant to sort of like, question.
Yeah.
Who is this man? The scene, so I mentioned, in the introduction, Carol's in this yard chasing chickens with me. There's a question. There's a scene. I should mention this. Danny Glover, who I think is probably like 40, 45 in real life when this film comes out, is playing a man who's much older.
Yeah, and convincingly. I actually went on like Wikipedia afterwards to check to be like, wait, is Danny Glover like older
100
than
years
I
old?
thought he was? Because I really believed, and no, I mean, he was, anyway, so yes.
Yeah, he is not just some random stranger who has, intruded upon the lives of this family. He is a welcome avatar of the past. He is someone that both Susie and Gideon, the matriarch and patriarch of this Black family, know from their past in the southern U.S. And initially, they are delighted to see him. And it is not for, a bit of time that his welcome starts to wear thin, first with, the women who seem to have a clearer understanding of the threat that he poses. And then later, with like Junior and other members. But so there's a scene where Harry is in the backyard of Susie and Gideon's house. And there are two older men around him. And these are men who he has known from the past as well, like, just blast from the past, these sort of roguish hangers-on. And one of them is chasing a chicken in the backyard. And they are talking about Gideon, who has since fallen ill, and speaking about it in such a way that you wonder, are they about to invoke some sort of supernatural power to either hurt Gideon or perhaps to help him? And so Harry takes the chicken and is preparing to kill it. It's clear he's about to kill it. But in that moment, there's a question about, is that chicken about to be sacrificed in some sort of like, folk ritual? Or, as we come to find out, are they just about to kill this chicken for dinner?
Yeah.
And so the way the film plays with that and plays with your expectations, it makes you sort of like hold your breath.
Yeah.
It's only possible in the hands of a really assured filmmaker who lets scenes play out and does not rush things. I was so grateful for the pacing of this movie.
And my goodness. So Charles Burnett also wrote this film. And I was just so impressed by all the different sort of thematic concerns and like ideas and things that get woven through this film, like just the amount of stuff that he had going on in his head as he was like writing this film that he wanted to engage with in the text of this film, which he does so, through narrative, through imagery, through so many, just through so much. This film is just so textually rich. I'm fascinated by there's this real kind of exploration and tension of both like generational divide between like the generations of the family, but also even you have the two families, the two sons and their wives, and there's this real tension between them because one set, I would say, seems to have a little bit more sort of respect or embracing of kind of what might be considered older traditions, and the other couple seems to be really just gung-ho for like a more like a sort of, I don't know, mainstream capitalist kind of contemporary lifestyle. Like there's one line in particular that I'm thinking of where I think it's Babe Brothers' wife says, I think, of the wife of Junior, something like, she kept her afterbirth in the refrigerator. That's why I don't eat over there anymore.
Right.
And, you feel this like those two couples, like they really have different ideas or different just whole attitudes and ways of being about like where they've come from, the traditions of the past, like who they are in the world today. And, you know, and all that stuff to me is just so it's so fascinating and so just richly explored in this film.
Yeah, I think so. Just speaking of familial ties, cultural ties. So the film opens with this absolutely amazing shot of Gideon, sort of dressed in like Sunday best. In the background is an old photograph of a woman, sepia tone photograph of a woman. There is a bowl of fruit next to him on the table. And there is something that clues us in to the fact that this is maybe a dream state, or what we're looking at is not necessarily something that is literally happening in that moment. But as we watch Gideon and the bowl of fruit slowly become consumed by this mysterious, fire that has, arisen out of nowhere, there is a question that then, is posed about, sort of connections to the past and senses of self as we, position ourselves within like family and within our own history. It's a absolutely, beautiful shot. But I think, and as we're watching this opening scene, we're listening to, iconic American singer, musician, Sister Rosetta Tharpe sing Precious Memories, this classic gospel tune, and about connections to the past. But yeah, so you have in this film, this multi-generational family, not just, Susie and Gideon, the parents, but their two sons and their respective families, but also everyone in the neighborhood who may or may not be related, but certainly have that sort of closeness that extended family has. It's a family network, regardless of whether there are actual blood ties there. There's the connection to the South, the sort of both mythic and very tangible sense of the South. And, the markers, of like the garden that Susie and Gideon still have in their backyard, the chickens, that they still rear back there.
Gideon early on in the film makes a reference to a charm he has lost.
Yes.
Made by I believe he says by his grandmother. And I wonder if it isn't the loss of that charm, like if that charm wasn't warding off Harry's evil, and if it isn't the loss of that charm that allows Harry to then arrive on their doorstep and invade their space. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, and it's one of those, like, Harry exists both as a real person, but also, yes, on the level of kind of like symbol for this family. David Sims in a review that we'll link to talks about Harry as, quote, an avatar for a fading generation and way of life. Harry very much insists upon, remembering and emphasizing the ways these things used to be done. He mentions in one conversation that he needs swamp root. He is living this itinerant lifestyle. He has not settled in the way that Gideon is.
He always makes a pallet on the floor to sleep on. There's all these things. And he's just so full of, all of his comments, though, are, just to go back to the ways in which he really, because you feel the family become sort of infected in a way over the duration of Harry's stay. Not only, Gideon's illness being like the most overt example, but the way too that the brothers end up really in violent struggle with each other at one point. But everything Harry says is this sort of, it can sound in a certain way like a kind of, maybe folksy wisdom almost, but it's also like deeply kind of immoral or evil from a certain perspective. Like he's talking to, about helping the homeless population of Los Angeles. And he says something like, to this woman who works at a place where they try to serve and help, hundreds or, 1,000, homeless people or whatever they can. And he says, take in just one homeless person. You can't save them all. Medicine that works leaves a bitter taste. And it's all stuff like that. That's just so, and the way Danny Glover is able to inhabit the role and inhabit this kind of, it has that kind of like, I mean, it's both like off-putting and repulsive in its like just disregard for like compassion or for human suffering, but there's also something about it that he makes it sound kind of seductive in a way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, so as I was watching this film, again, To Sleep with Anger comes out in 1990. Danny Glover, by this point, has enough star power that he is able to help co-finance the film and arrange for it to, to be made. He has already made Lethal Weapon 2 by this point.
Okay. Okay.
So
right.
he's got that kind of punch. But also remember Danny Glover as Mr. in The Color Purple, something, a role with which he will always be associated in my mind. And this was such a wonderful reminder of the way that a man with his face, which is so open and expressive, and he's a big man, he's a tall man, and he uses his body and his size in such a way that that you want to be welcomed within his space. He can be very seductive, but he carries that air of menace and threat so well, and he will be in one moment a person making you cry with laughter at his kind of like, down home conversations and behaviors. And in the next minute, spear you with a look that says, this is someone who cannot be trusted. He's absolutely fantastic in this film.
He's so good.
And the way that he holds his own, and as you say, Carol, like actually convinces you that he is an older man, 20, 25 years older than he actually is.
Yeah.
There's this great scene near the end of the film where Harry is playing cards and talking shit with, his old ancient buddies.
His lodge buddies, right there, like in
his
a
lodge buddies, his blood brothers.
Yeah.
And Bay Brother is playing cards with them. And Harry says, you ought to come back down home with me, essentially telling him, you should abandon your family, your responsibilities here, come be like me, surrender to the allure of the life that I lead. And he manages in that moment to convince Bay Brother this. And one of the things that he tells him is, you need to not be worried about that woman, because first thing, real men got more than one woman.
Yes. And you should never treat a woman as an equal, he says.
Exactly, right? And many mules make the plowing easy. So one woman gets mad at you, you just go stay with another woman. And, it's the kind of thing that you might or might not laugh at as, being ridiculous. But when you stop for a moment and really think about what he is suggesting, it reveals itself to be so horrific and also so utterly bankrupt as a position, right? He's in this sad room with these other dudes, who are living lives essentially of like quiet desperation. They have no one. Gideon has this loving family, this loving wife, this amazing circle that he has grown and built. And they are saying, no, what we have, card games, switchblades, fly strips is better.
Corn liquor. Corn
liquor. And also, I would note, ain't none of those dudes got a woman, let alone multiple women,
Right.
But the story they are telling, the tales that these men tell, is so seductive for Bay Brother in that moment. But that he is bewitched. He is, in a way, almost literally bewitched and ensorcelled by Harry. And it is not until he is physically away from Harry and, the sort of enchantment that he creates around him that he is able to come back to himself.
Yeah. I want to, also mention that this is a film of South Central Los Angeles. And, and I mean, I think it is noteworthy to mention that this is a film set released in 1990, set in South Central Los Angeles with nary a drive-by shooting or like gang, member or anything of that nature, like in its narrative. Like, I mean, for me, as like the white viewer who has basically only ever been exposed to, if it's something set in South Central, like it is purely a gang or, cop kind of drama. Like it's like refreshing and like also like how come like just this is a perspective of life in there that I have here, heretofore like not seen. And I mean, I'm sure on me to some degree, but like, it's also just, if you heard on the news in LA at that time, South Central Los Angeles, it meant one thing and one thing only. But Burnett, I think, does find an interesting way, nonetheless, to engage with sort of the failure of systems to adequately serve the people in that neighborhood. And like, particularly for me, this comes at near the end of the film, because something really like just galling. I mean, the family has to endure something truly galling. So first of all, Harry, much to my surprise, dies. And I think the method by which he dies is fascinating, because it goes back to, it's again, like the child with the broom. Well, here it's the child's playthings, the child's toys, essentially, that kind of bring about Harry's death. And we can, like, there's just so much interesting, like, is it the innocence of what they represent? And like, what is it exactly like that, because there's clearly something happening there on kind of a symbolic level, or as opposed to just purely a literal level. But then, and I half believed that Harry was gonna like spring back to life. I honestly did, because I wasn't fully convinced that this film was not operating in in that territory. But what does happen is that the paramedics who come to first to try to resuscitate Harry, to give him treatment, like they say, well, there's nothing we can do for him. He has perished. And then like they cannot take the body with them. They have to leave it there. And it's supposedly the county or whatever is going to like come pick him up at some point. But like the family can't get a straight answer from the county of like when they're coming, and they keep getting the runaround. And so the body of this man is just left there, like on the floor of the kitchen for I don't even know what duration of time. But it's and I mean, it's a fascinating narrative development that I think does raise these issues of how these, because fucking whatever white family in Sherman Oaks is going to probably have like whatever is going to probably have a dead body just left on the floor for days,
for
I would
hours
imagine.
and hours. Exactly.
So anyway, I thought that was just a fascinating thing to happen in this film too.
It is. And it is one of the few moments during which we see, sort of the friction between the life and the all black environment in this family with the sort of larger world. And one of the things that is sort of, symptomatic or is endemic to Charles Burnett's work is that it is, yes, there is a story here, and to sleep with anger. Things do happen, but in many ways, and certainly for much of the film, like I would argue maybe the first third of the film, it is not so much about what is happening plot-wise, but it is about like a slice of life. It is about these portraits we get, of people in certain moments, and these moments layered on each other, and in some ways it's less about, like, what is this family going to have to endure, and will they come out strong at the other end, or will they be consumed by this evil, but more just about this is life, and these are people. And this is this particular family. And I think it's important to realize that that's what's going on, because if you're not prepared for it, and this, I will say right off the bat, this is certainly something that I had to sort of, readjust my dial for. if you are not going in prepared for a Very Caro movie,
Right.
you might become impatient with this film and frustrated with both its pace and with the performances. And so you need to be aware that part of what is, like, everything that's happening is done very deliberately, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, the performances for me, like, there's something very theatrical about a lot of the performances. And so, you know, if you are unaccustomed to, or, you know, unwilling to enjoy sort of deliberately non-naturalistic, you know, in quotation marks, performances, you will perhaps be like, you will bounce off this film. But it's really important to note that, like, because the film itself is like a portrait of lives, that there is something necessary about that kind of performance, as if these people are playing roles, as if they are being staged, because that is precisely what's happening. You know, like they have been staged in these various moments, in these various tableaus.
Yeah, and not only, I mean, obviously, of course, you know, I love the way this film is just observant about the lives of its characters, and we get that time and that pacing, though I fully agree, like, you're right, people do need to be, you know, prepared for a film that is not what we might say conventionally entertain. It doesn't offer the same pleasures that you know we often come to a film expecting. But also I want to just also mention the thoughtful, and we've touched on this a little bit, but the really thoughtful and deliberate use of imagery in this film too. I mean, even just, you know, early in the film, there's, you know, the Sonny, the young boy, right? I think he's in bed and he's got this like half-eaten apple in his hand. And then, you know, and I think right before Harry arrives, there's an egg that falls on the floor and cracks open, and it vibrates with meaning. It seems to suggest, like, oh, you know, things are not gonna go according to plan here for a while. Really just thoughtful and deliberate and really well constructed and lovely use of imagery as part of how this film makes its meaning and communicates to the viewer what, you know, all the layers on which it's operating. So so great.
Yeah. We could spend so many hours talking about this film, but let's just wrap it up there by saying I heartily recommend To Sleep with Anger. Do not go into it with your MCU brain on, because we are trying to recalibrate y'all. You know, we are trying to bring a Very Caro movie into your, you know, your home library. So check it out. To Sleep with Anger, 1990, available on Amazon is where I watched it. I think Carol's got that Criterion hookup, so she probably gets the stuff for free. But
I mean, I watched it. It's no longer on the Criterion Channel website where you can watch it streaming, unfortunately, but it is available in a new, fairly new Criterion Collection edition, which I'm sure has all kinds of lovely supplements and things. But I mean, it's also just, I watched it on Vudu, I think, so it's available to stream online in many places right now.
Right on. All right, we will be right back to share some freakouts. What's up, FFR listeners? We've got so much great conversation coming your way this month on Feminist Frequency Radio. Why not sign up to get early access and bonus episodes? Oh, and help us keep making the show? Head on over to patreon.com/femfreak today and sign up. What's your freakout? Now it is time to talk about what's been thrilling us, moving us, upsetting us, or infuriating us this past week. I'm going to go first because I can, because I'm in control. I am in the host chair. Just a quick note, like so many people during lockdown, I have either been like obsessively consuming content, as Anita hates for us to say, and it's such a gross way of thinking about it, but obsessively consuming stuff, or have been unable to kind of land and stick with anything, right? But recently, I raced through a series of novels by Grace Draven called the Wraith King series. Now, I will say these are sort of kind of epic fantasy romance. So if that's not your jam, I don't want to hear about it. Don't write me. But if that is your jam, please dig right on in. I love I don't even know what to say about this, because the thing that, it keeps drawing me in, for one thing, is the really natural and organic way that women are folded into like the sort of martial aims of the story, which sounds weird. I like to consider myself a pacifist, but there's something about an ass-kicking woman that I really love. And the fact that, this is not notable in any way. The fact that, when as the story progresses, someone will say like, oh, so-and-so is the best fighter, in this troop. And to have that be a woman, and it's just a natural occurrence.
Right,
it's not something that's commented upon,
right.
Or, so-and-so is the king's favorite bodyguard, and it is, a woman. I love that. I also love, the story is about two, young people who have to come together, and there's an arranged marriage between their two kingdoms. Neither of them is really happy about this, but they do it because it's their duty as two royal heirs. The woman is from this human kingdom. The male is from this kingdom, non-human kingdom. And so much of what happens is about them coming together and being horrified and repulsed by each other initially, but they grow to love you guys. Oh my God, it's so sweet. But it never shies away from, the kind of like real instinctual reactions of both of them. So the husband, the dude, Brishan, I'm blanking on the name of his race right now, but they are very tall. They have eyes, sort of lizard-like kind of eyes. And so he is just repulsed by Iliko's eyes and the fact that you can see the whites of her eyes, because his people don't have that.
Right.
And so sort of the way this author really skillfully reminds you of the things that we sort of take for granted in small ways are not culturally or, species sort of, like objectively, like they don't have currency everywhere. Right. And so like Brishan is, every time his wife like rolls her eyes or her eyes open wide in surprise, he's sort of like disgusted a little bit. And it takes him a second to sort of reset. And I'm not nearly giving this series the love or the explanation that it's due, because I'm terrible at that sort of thing. But it's called the Wraith Kings series, and there's fighting and romance, there's sorcery, there's jokes, there's drinking in ale houses, there's just like all the kind of stuff that you would want from a series like this, with none of the bullshit. So it's by Grace Draven. It's called the Wraith King series. Carol, what is your freak out?
So I was sort of torn this week between To Sleep with Anger, which I'm very glad we did, and another film by another Black filmmaker whose work I think is very interesting and significant, and who maybe hasn't quite gotten the respect and acclaim that he deserves. The other film I was thinking of having us talk about this week is a film called Deep Cover, and it's directed by Bill Duke. And so Deep Cover is a more conventionally I think pleasurable, entertaining, exciting film than To Sleep with Anger, but a really fascinating and excellent film that stars Lawrence Fishburne and, of course, Ebony's favorite Jeff Goldblum.
That's right.
But also just like a visual and stylistic feast. I mean, the fashions of this film, the Jeff Goldblum in like a long kind of trench coat thing looks fucking amazing. But a really fascinating film about like the drug war and identity and Bill Duke to me is so Bill Duke, people may know also as like an actor. I find him to be such a fascinating screen presence. In the 80s, he was often like a heavy in like action films. So for instance, he's a bad guy that Arnold Schwarzenegger has to deal with in Commando, and then in Predator, he's probably the most fascinating member of Arnie's squad there in the jungle. He also shows up in films like American Gigolo and stuff like that. And he actually has a small but significant role in the new Steven Soderbergh ensemble film, No Sudden Move, with Don Cheadle and everything. So it was great to see Bill Duke on screen again. But yeah, I mean, so Deep Cover is sort of, I guess, like To Sleep with Anger. Deep Cover is recently kind of, I think the Criterion Collection is making some kind of course correction effort to like acknowledge that they have completely ignored Black film, like basically the entirety of like a great Black cinema of, and you know, I mean. So Deep Cover is also a new addition to the Criterion Collection, but really just a fantastic and perhaps kind of underknown and underseen 90s kind of cop, thriller. And yeah, I mean, Lawrence Fishburne looks so just, I mean, oh my God, like it's just, again, just a film that I enjoy aesthetically. It's a film that just, that there's so many beautiful images in this film, both of its actors and just Bill Duke's use of like light and shadow and color and everything. So I'm pleased to see the film getting maybe, you know, some more sort of acclaim and recognition. Not that the Criterion Collection is the end all be all of like prestige. It certainly is not that, but nonetheless, like it join the collection is something that I was very pleased to see. And, you know, so if that's a film that if you're more in the mood for something that you don't have to recalibrate as much for as you do To Sleep with Anger, but that is still like a great film with a, you know, by a Black filmmaker with a Black, you know, star. Deep Cover is definitely a film that you should see. It's really, really excellent.
It really is. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it didn't occur to me till just this moment that, you know, all the years that I've known you now, Carol, I never once suggested that we go as Lawrence Fishburne and Jeff Goldblum as a Halloween costume.
Yeah.
Would have been so natural, but it's too late now.
Alas.
Yeah. So listen, y'all, you can submit your own freakouts at feministfrequency.com/FREQOUT. We love to get them. We don't get them nearly enough. I think we've got a couple coming up next week that you're going to be delighted to listen to. But yeah, send some more in. We like to hear what you're listening to, what you're reading, what you're watching, you know? Like, come on. Thank you all so much for listening to Feminist Frequency Radio. Tune in next week when we'll be talking about another Very Caro selection, the exuberant 2013 Swedish comedy drama, We Are the Best. Our show is engineered by Rob Pera. Carrie Stimson provides technical support. Artwork is by Jamie Varon, and our intro music is by Phil Circus. We'll talk to y'all later.
Bye, everyone.